What's up everyone, Hazario here, and welcome to another Yu-Gi-Oh! 101 Retro Modernization video, a series where I take older structures and bring them into the modern era of Yu-Gi-Oh! In order to make them playable, not make them tournament worthy or anything like that, but to take the original ideas and try to expound on them and try to bring some new life to them and make them playable. You know, sometimes I don't always go with the typical things that you normally would see in a, a build that I make. So the whole concept is different, and this is kind of my state of mind when I went into making this build that we're going to look at right now, the ancient gears. And this is actually version 2 of the build. Version 1, I didn't even bother to record it. I kind of just stripped down version 1 and I redesigned the build to what it is right now. And I have to say that I did a pretty good job with this build. Just looking at the retro modernized, version of it as it is now, it's helped me in some tight fucking spots. But first, let me tell you about the cards that are in the build, cards in the extra deck, as well as in the side, and then let me explain what my strategy was for going into the, excuse me, for going into making this build. So what we have is 3 Ancient Gear Beasts, 3 Ancient Gear Box, 3 Ancient Gear Engineer, 3 Ancient Gear Golems, 3 Ancient Gear Knight, 3 Ancient Gear Soldier, got 3 Gear Gyogers, 3 Ancient Gear Castles, 1 Ancient Gear Drill, 3 Ancient Gear Tank, 1 Ancient Gear Workshop, 3 GearTown, 2 Polymerization, 1 Spell Gear, 2 Terraforming, 2 Dimensional Prison, 3 Magic Cylinder, and 2 Mirror Force. For the extra deck, I have 3 Parapsychroid, Ultimate Ancient Gear Golem, and Gear Giant X. Now, the side deck, I have 3 Ancient Gear, 1 Ancient Gear Drill, 2 Ancient Gear Explosives, 1 Ancient Gear Factory, and 3 Ancient Gear Fists. As I've spoken on before, the side deck is just ideas. It's not actually meant to be used in the duel. So, I understand that the first thing that people are thinking, why does he have 2 polymerizations in the graveyard, but he has 6 6 fusion monsters in there? I really put that in there for defensive purposes. Don't ask me why. I don't know what I was thinking. I'm guessing if, in the case that my opponent picks try and guess, or uses um, cards like try and guess on me, and then they pick like fusion monsters or whatever, and I don't know if they don't think I have as many fusion monsters as I will have, you know, that's pretty much why I added those in there. So I don't really get what I was thinking when I did that, but still, like, they're in there, so what? But yeah, the original, or the concept that I went into or the strategy into making this build was that I wanted to make a build without using an ancient gear build without using the typical means that you see with an ancient gear build. So you notice that I don't have Gadjiltron Dragon or Chimera in this, because I feel like those 2 cards are like, that's like the typical what you would expect with an ancient gear build. Because yeah, they're very powerful beat sticks, but the way that they're designed, they're more so to work with the gadgets than the ancient gear build. Otherwise, like, they're just beat sticks. And I can do without that. So this strategy was to have beat sticks that when they attack, they can prevent your opponent from using, of course, what the ancient gears do. They can prevent your opponent from, activating their spells and traps and things like that. I've actually had people quit on me, and you guys seen the fan day videos. I've had people quit on me in duels because I was using the ancient gears. Now, ancient gears are supposed to suck. They are supposed to suck. literally. Like they're supposed to be difficult to get on the field, and it's actually things with the ancient gears that I don't think other people realize that make them. They have some good technical things about them that I don't think people paid attention to because they only see ancient gears being used a certain way and things like that. And I wanted to create, you know, a concept with the ancient gears that made them a threat without going and relying on the typical cards such as Dragon and Chimera. But as you can see right here, GearTown. Both players contribute summon ancient gear monsters with one less tribute than required. When this card is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon one ancient gear monster from your hand, deck, or graveyard. But that's the key thing right there. That's the thing that caught my attention with GearTown. Both players can tribute summon ancient gear monsters with one less tribute than required. How come I never seen this being used with people that use GearTown? You know, what I'm saying? That pretty much goes that net deck theory. Yeah, they only pay attention to what they see, and they think that's it. They don't pay attention to anything else. Because I never seen anybody, bother to pay attention to that one less tribute effect of Gear Town. And with that being said, this severely helps Ancient Gear Beast and Ancient Gear Engineer because you can just normal summon them without worry. Ancient Gear Engineer level 5, Ancient Gear Beast, so they both would take one tribute, and if Gear Town allows you to normal summon with one tribute less, you can just normal summon them on the field without worry. Hence the reason why I have two terraforming on the field, because they actually, because you know what I'm saying, like you need Gear Town, like you need it. You know what I'm saying, like there's no cutting corners. You need Gear Town on the field to really, like get things turning, or ironically, to really get the gears turning, you need to have Gear Town on the field. Because let me tell you something about Ancient Gear Beast. I've went up against hands. I went up against various monsters that my opponents were using, and Ancient Gear Beast kicks all of their asses. It prevents monsters' effects from activating when Ancient Gear Beast destroys them by battle. Now you add that on top of the fact that your opponent can't activate any spell cards or trap cards. This is just a pretty much a sure thing. And you put like one Ancient Gear tank on there, which is going to beef up any Ancient Gear monster by 600 attack. I mean, it even stops the effects from activating in the graveyard. How cool is that? And this is a card that people overlooks. And I'm just like, really? Like, y'all don't use Ancient Gear Beast? And I didn't even realize what was going on with Ancient Gear Beast until I actually went up against those monsters and I noticed what the effect was. And I was like, oh, this card is sick. And, people never bothered with Ancient Gear Beast. There was always Gear Town Dragon, Gear Town Dragon. People don't even use Ancient Gear Golem anymore. But whatever. Next up, I have Ancient Gear boxes in there to search out, pretty much just Ancient Gear Knight, because that's all it really can search for. It's there to, because Knight will be like your main go-to monster. I mean, of course, there's Ancient Gear Soldier, but it's a bit weak, and unless you have a tank in your hand, you really don't want to, have to summon this. Uh, I have 3 castles in there because obviously this is going to come in handy when summoning Ancient Gear Golem. As you normal summon monsters, or each time a monster gets normal summoned via your side, or whatever, you can put a spell counter on this card, or place one counter on the card. On top of the fact that your Ancient Gear monsters gain a 300 attack boost, which does come in handy in a tight spot, you can substitute as some tribute fodder for an Ancient Gear monster, aka Ancient Gear Golem, because that's pretty much going to be your main objective, is to get Golem on the field, because it can fuck some shit up. It inflicts piercing damage, and it prevents your opponent from activating spells and traps during the damage. So like while it's attacking. Now, Gear Gyogger. I've tried to maneuver around this card, but it's so good. And one thing I noticed is that machines don't really have any good search support. And when a build like Ancient Gears, it really does come in handy. Like it speeds them up just enough to get everything that you need. Of course, in worst case scenario, like you won't be able to special summon any other monsters to the field, or you know, besides machine type monsters. Luckily, which all of them are. So in the event that you feel like you want to special summon anything, hey, so like you're safe. But it speeds up the build just enough to where you can search out, gear, ancient gear soldier if you need it, ancient gear knight. But the primary reason you want this search, like you want this in there, is to activate the effect of ancient gear box. It has to be added from the deck to your hand, you know, from some effect outside of the draw phase. I'm gonna put it to you like that, and you can activate its effect that will allow you to search for night, and it kind of speeds up the build a little bit. Plus, it um, in a best case scenario, like you have two level fours on the field that can go towards gear X, which can also search for other level 4 or lower machine type monsters. You know what I mean? So that right there just goes together hand in hand. Gear Gyogger, Ancient Gearbox, Ancient Gear Knight. Bright side, your your deck is getting thinned out, and that increases your chances of getting Engineer, Beast, and Golem, quicker. Now, as far as the spell cards go, I already explained Terraforming and Gear Town already, as well as Ancient Gear Castle. Ancient Gear Tank is, in my opinion, one of the best equipped spells out there. Of course, you can only use it with the Ancient Gears, haha. But yeah, I mean, it's an equipped spell that does that boosts attack by 600 and inflicts that much burn damage when it gets destroyed and sent to the graveyard. So that's just great. Ancient Gear Drill is good search tech. So if you feel like you need Ancient Gear Castle, or like a Gear Town, or whatever it feels may, like whatever the case may be, in theory, this is just another terraforming. Now, granted, you won't be able to activate that spell card that turn, but still, you'll be able to do something. And it is what it is. Now, Ancient Gears Workshop is in the event that you do activate Ancient Gear Drill, or if any monster, or if any of your Ancient Gear monsters are in the graveyard that you feel like you may need at that moment, you can just get it right back to your hand. So, so like there you go. Now, Spell Gear is actually something that I threw in there because since I'm using 3 Golem, and Golem is like the primary target when it comes to this build, you would want to get Golem on the field, as soon as possible, or at least at the right time. And you're pretty, in the right situation, you're going to have 3 Ancient Gear cards on the field in order for you to use this. And you can special summon 1 Ancient Gear Golem from your hand and 1 from your deck, ignoring their summoning conditions. So even though they can't be special summoned, even though Ancient Gear Golem can't be special summoned, Spell Gear lets you bypass that and ignore those summoning conditions, and you can special summon them. So that's good. So you can have 3 castles on the field. You have Ancient Gear Tank. You know, any of the Ancient Gear monsters. 3 Ancient Gear cards. So Spell Gear is in there for that. It's in there for that element of surprise. All of a sudden your opponent think that they got you. You do have 3, ancient gear monsters on the field. Surprise, motherfucker! And so that's why that's in there. Now the trap cards are pretty much self-explanatory. Prison, I've explained it on multiple occasions. I love that damn card. It does wonders. Magic Cylinder is in there to just inflict burn damage to your opponent whenever your monsters attack, and Mirror Force is in there just to, you know, this pretty much just anti-swarm, so that's why that's in there. Now for the side deck, Ancient Gear Explosive is, again, it's an idea that if you're in a situation that you only have, or where like your opponent only has just a little bit of life points left, and you know that you can beat them had you just doing like just did like one more attack, but you didn't have that option at your disposal, you can throw in Ancient Gear Explosive and you can just burn that away if the situation ever arose for it. So you can add that into the build. Ancient Gear Fist. I prefer Ancient Gear Tank over this, but I never really bothered with it. But I could see why somebody would want to pick Gear Fist over Ancient Gear Tank. But then again, Tank adds attack power to your monsters, and 9 times out of 10 you're gonna have an Ancient Gear monster on there that's gonna need that attack boost. Now, granted, Ancient Gear Fist does destroy your opponent's monsters or the monster that destroyed it, as long as Ancient Gear Fist was equipped to that Ancient Gear monster. At the end of the damage step, you can destroy it. So, say like you're going up against cards like Marshmallow or any type of monster that can't be destroyed by battle, you can still destroy it with Ancient Gear Fist. So that's a good, saying like counter to those cards. So if you feel like you need Ancient Gear Fist, it's in there. Like it does have a purpose. I put in another Ancient Gear Drill just in case you feel like one wasn't enough in the build. You can add another one. And Ancient Gear is just in there for, I don't know, like it's really just like the retarded cousin of everybody else. It doesn't do it doesn't do anything, and I don't have any Exceed monsters for it. GearTown in Ancient Gear Castle kind of eliminates any need to have it in there, so it's basically just on the sideline. It's pretty much a bench warmer. You know what I'm saying? Like it's a bench warmer. That's all it is. So Psychroid is in there. In the event that you're in a situation where you feel like you wanna, for whatever reason, like fuse into something and you don't have the necessary fusion materials for Ultimate Ancient Gear Golem, this is there for a backup. If you have two monsters that have the same name, two machine type monsters with the same name, you can, fuse into this, and it's able to attack your opponent directly. So this is good for like that last minute damage. Your opponent has monsters on their side of the field, and you know, or at least in like an ideal situation, and they have like one or two spells or traps that aren't doing anything, but they're trying to call your bluff. You can just bypass all their monsters and just hit them with this. Ultimate Ancient Gear Golem is in there. In the event for whatever reason you're not able to get Ancient Gear Golem on the field, this is something that well, for one, it's a powerful fucking monster that can inflict, you know, some piercing damage. That can inflict piercing damage to your opponent. Then on top of that, if this card gets destroyed, it can ignore the summoning conditions of Ancient Gear Golem, and it can special summon one Ancient Gear Golem from your graveyard. So I would say that's a pretty good fusion monster to have. And I explain why Gear Giant X is in there. To begin with, it searches out other level 4 lower machine type monsters, and you'll be able to get Gear Gyalgar X on the field. So your following turn, you'll be able to summon another level 4 and exceed into something. So yeah, it's in there. So this build is literally one of my biggest pride and joys. I didn't turn to anything typical, and it's not to feel like an elitist, but I felt like I never think that a build is only what someone else has showed. I never believe that a build is only something that somebody else showed me, and that's kind of the essence of a net deck. You see this and you think that's the only way it's supposed to work, and I never bothered with net decks for that very reason. They are pretty much a lie. you know, I, if you asked anybody prior to this that said, well, is there any ancient gear builds out there that can use or anything like that? They will refer you to a net deck that would have ancient gear and dragon in it. Like that would be the only two main cards in there, like a bunch of gadgets and all that. That would have been the ancient gear build. Now you have an alternative to that, retro modernization. Why people don't use more ancient gear beast, I have no fucking clue. This card is fucking amazing. You have castle on the field and ancient gear tank. That's a fucking nine. That's a 900 attack boost, man. That's a 900 attack boost, and the effect of castle stacks. Like so with three of these, like that's um, if I'm not mistaken, the effect of ancient gear castle stacks. You know what I'm saying? Because like I haven't played the build in a while, so I can't remember if it stacks, but I believe it does. You know, and that's 900 from those three cards alone. But you put one ancient gear tank plus one of these, that's I mean, yeah, man, that's a lot. So like the build is pretty efficient, just as long as you know what to do and when to do it. Because again, every retro modernization build that I've ever made, the cornerstone to using them is patience. Take your time, see what you can do, and you will be able to, you know, have that duel go into your favor. And I've beaten some of the, like the better builds of today's Yu-Gi-Oh era with this card because of this guy, Ancient Gear Beast. I can't tell you enough how happy I am that I discovered this guy. He saved my ass in some tight situations, man. That wasn't a gay joke. But yeah, man. So here it is, Ancient Gears. Pretty solid build. Pretty good. Like I know some people may say, "Oh man, I would have never put three Ancient Gear Golems in there." Hey, well, you're you. You're not me. I made this, so enjoy it. So thanks for watching. Peace. You guys tell me how you feel about the build. So like, will you try it out? Will you tell me how how it works out for you? And I'll see you guys for another retro modernization. Peace, and talk to you later.